Dreaming a better tomorrow. To find yourself, you must think for yourself, Socrates once said. Most people would call me a successful man. I have a job, a car, and my parents' love. And my boss and colleagues aren't harassing me. But my so-called success in life depends on a lie. A lie that I fulfill. A single, simple criterion. A single fact about me that I keep hidden from everyone in my life. To prevent that lie from being known. Everyone thinks I'm normal. I'm not. A normal man would look at a beautiful woman and feel desire. A normal man doesn't immediately fall for the first attractive gay man he meets. My name is Rahul. This is my story. The story of how I met the love of my life. The story of how we persevered for change and how we are treated. And the story of how we succeeded. Stay a while and listen. And maybe you'll one day start to think for yourself in order to find yourself. My life was ordinary. I hadn't experienced any great difficulty, nor was I a prodigy of any sort. My parents were stereotypical Indian middle-class family. I'm an only child, and from day one, both of them were always strict with me. Though that's not to say that they were harsh and unloving. They simply expected that I would one day grow up and fulfill their ideal of a good man. But even as a teenager, I knew I wasn't normal. I wasn't like other kids who had pictures of famous male actors in their bedrooms. When other kids put up those pictures, it was because they wanted to be like them. When I put up the same picture, it was to be with those handsome actors. It was only when I was 16 that I realized how abnormal I was. When the boy I considered my closest friend got a girlfriend, I was jealous. But not because I wanted the girl. I wanted the boy. In many ways, that realization broke me. It fundamentally changed the way I viewed my life. Maybe the situation would have been a bit better in other countries, but in India, I would be lucky to stay alive if anyone found out that I was gay. After that, my life was a struggle. I hid my sexual identity from everyone in my life. I was paranoid that if anyone found out, my life as I knew it would be over. I forced myself to act like a normal straight man, as if I too liked women, the same way all the men around me did. But no matter what I did, I was never truly happy. Everything felt fake, as if I was living the life of a different man. The real Rahul Kapoor didn't exist, and perhaps couldn't exist. Not before I met him. Not before I met Arjun Singh, the love of my life. I remember our first meeting like it was yesterday. I stood at the edge of the bustling room, my gaze sweeping over the vibrant crowd. It was the birthday party of one of my friends, Geeta. Another one of those gatherings where I hoped to find a temporary reprieve from the weight of my hidden desires. The clash between what was expected of me and my true identity had left me feeling suffocated, yearning for a connection that would understand my struggles. And then, amidst a sea of unfamiliar faces, I saw him, Arjun Singh. There was an aura of confidence that surrounded him, an energy that captivated my attention. He was handsome, and I couldn't help taking a second look. He had a mischievous smile, and I couldn't help my own lips turning up in response. To this day, I don't know what prompted me to approach him. I'd met other handsome men before, and I'd spoken to them without any difficulty. But when I first saw Arjun, my heart started racing. My lips were dry, and my hands felt clammy. Mustering my courage, I approached him. "Hi," I managed to greet, my voice betraying the mix of nerves and excitement coursing through me. Arjun turned towards me, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. His warm smile enveloped me, and the sound of his voice was like balm to my soul. "Hello there," he replied, his voice carrying a sense of ease and invitation. "You must be Rahul. I'm Arjun. Geeta mentioned you'd be here." I nodded, relief washing over me that he recognized me. "Yes, that's me. It's good to finally meet you," I responded, my voice tinged with a slight tremor. I tried to recall what I'd heard about him from Geeta. He had spent his undergraduate years at Chicago University. I hadn't realized that he came back to India, however. Arjun chuckled, the sound laced with a warmth and genuine amusement. "Likewise, Rahul. I've heard so much about you." We fell into conversation effortlessly, the words flowing between us as if we had known each other for years. Time seemed to blur as we discussed our shared interests, our dreams, and the struggles we faced living as a gay man in India. It shocked me how easy he admitted that he was gay. His voice didn't waver and he never stopped smiling. I couldn't help my sudden flinch when he first mentioned it. But Arjun continued as if nothing happened, and the conversation simply continued. As the night progressed, I found myself irresistibly drawn to Arjun. His magnetic presence and his unapologetic frankness awakened something dormant within me. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a connection that transcended mere friendship. In his eyes, I saw reflections of my own desires and unfulfilled yearnings. It was a delicate dance, an exploration of uncharted territory, but in Arjun's presence, the weight of my hidden desires no longer felt insurmountable. He became my source of inspiration, a guiding light in the darkness that had clouded my world for far too long. Whenever our hands brushed each other, I couldn't help my cheeks blushing, which I tried to cover up as if I was simply laughing at his jokes. But his amused gaze made it seem like he knew what had really happened. Somehow, I wasn't scared that Arjun would realize that I was gay. As the event drew to a close, Arjun and I exchanged contact information. I wanted to keep in touch with him, and I rationalized to myself that I was simply doing it because he was such a good conversationalist. But even then, some part of me seemed to realize that it was a lie. I had fallen for Arjun Singh on the very night that I met him, and all our subsequent meetings only made my feelings grow. You couldn't speak with Arjun for a minute before he started talking about his activist efforts. Arjun was highly supportive of activism and protests against the sodomy law in India. When we met each other for the third time, he led me through the labyrinthine streets of Mumbai, his confident strides matching the rhythm of my racing heart. The terror and anticipation pulsed through my veins as we approached our destination, a hidden haven for the LGBTQ+ community, a clandestine support group that operated discreetly within the city. As we reached the unmarked door of the safe space, Arjun turned to me, his eyes filled with reassurance. Rahul, this is a place where you can be your true self, where you can share your experiences, fears, and desires without fear of judgment or persecution. It's a community who understands and accepts us for who we are. I was shocked and flustered. I don't know what you're trying to imply, but just because I spend time with you doesn't mean that I'm like you. How dare you say that? I tried to flee immediately, but Arjun grabbed my hand, stopping me. You're right. Sorry. I was just kidding, he said, his eyes filled with sympathy. I tried to focus on his voice, even though I had a lump in my throat, and my heart was racing in terror. I'm sorry, I wasn't implying anything. I just assumed the wrong thing. But please, stay. Why don't you hear out the stories of the people inside? I swear they're all good people, and who knows, you might hear an interesting story or two, he said in a conciliatory tone, as if he was trying to calm me down. It worked. I felt better, becoming calmer, and took a deep breath. As long as you understand that I'm straight. Yeah, sure. Let's go meet them. Though Arjun seemed to know that I was lying about my sexual identity, he simply smiled and led me inside, as I took another deep breath, steeling myself for what lay beyond the door. As we entered the room, the air felt charged with a mix of vulnerability and resilience. Arjun guided me to an empty seat, and I settled in, taking in the sight of the diverse group gathered before me. There were faces etched with resilience and determination, yet also marked with the scars of a society that had tried to suppress our identities. But within these walls, they were free to embrace the truth. As the meeting commenced, the individuals shared their experiences, pouring their hearts out with a raw honesty that resonated with every beat of my own. Each story was a testament to the strength and resilience that united them, a reminder that they were not defined by society's narrow perceptions. Arjun held my hand beneath the table, offering silent reassurance that spoke volumes. In that simple touch, I felt an unspoken connection, a lifeline that had anchored me to the present moment. The weight I had carried for so long began to lighten, replaced by the understanding and support of those around me. I refused to speak, but I was still affected by the camaraderie and understanding that everyone around me showed each other. Others shared their stories, offering guidance, empathy, and advice to one another. The room became a sanctuary where vulnerability was met with compassion, where shared experiences created a tapestry of strength. I realized that I was not alone in my journey. We were all navigating the complexities of our identities, supporting one another as we sought a world that would accept us without reservation. As the meeting drew to a close, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a flickering flame of hope within me. I had found my tribe, a community that embraced me for what I am. Leaving the support group, I walked alongside Arjun, feeling lighter and a burning need to confess what I really am. When we got back to my car, I couldn't help turning to Arjun after closing the doors. Hey Arjun, I started in a hesitant tone. I think I'm gay. Arjun smiled with compassion in his eyes. I see. Thank you for telling me. Then he leaned forward, whispering as he was telling me a great secret. I'm gay too. I couldn't help the snicker that escaped me, which soon turned into a loud laughter, which then turned into sobs, as Arjun pulled me into his arms, comforting me, as I confessed what I had been trying to run away from all my life. I liked men. I was gay. And it was alright to be this way. I didn't know how long we stayed that way, with me sobbing and Arjun comforting me, but there was no more conversation that day. I dropped him off at his home and returned to my own. My parents were home but didn't notice my eyes, which were red from crying. As I lay down on my bed, I felt as if a great weight had been taken off of me. Somehow, the expectations of my friends and family didn't feel as crushing as they were before. I had shared who I was with someone else, and I was not despised for it. It made me feel happy. From then on, me and Arjun got to meet with the LGBTQ plus support group on a weekly basis. We hung out in other places, of course, but a space where we could freely talk about who we were without fearing judgment made us feel safe. This time, however, when the time came for us to talk about our stories and our experiences living as a queer person in India, I had the courage to speak up with Arjun by my side. It was a simple statement from my father that changed the relationship between me and Arjun from a friendship to a romantic relationship. One day, while we were eating dinner, he looked up from his plate and asked me, "Son, we're going to start looking for a suitable bride for you." These words hung in the air, each syllable piercing through me like 1,000 tiny arrows. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to burst out of its confines. This was the moment I had been dreading, the collision of my tradition and my true self. My mother's voice joined my father's, her tone laced with a mixture of hope and expectation. "It's important for you to settle down, Rahul, to have a family of your own. It's best to do it early." I struggled to find my voice. The words caught my throat like a tangled knot. The weight of their expectations bore down on me, suffocating my dreams and desires. How could I explain to them the inner turmoil I faced, the love that dared not speak its name? But I had to try. I had to find the courage to be true to myself, even in the face of their disappointment and disapproval. Taking a deep breath, I mustered the strength to speak my truth. "Mom, Dad, I understand your concerns, and I appreciate the love and care you have always shown me," I began, my voice shaky but resolute. "But I want you to know that I've been struggling with something important, something that I've kept hidden for far too long." Their eyes met mine, a mix of confusion and worry etched in their faces. I continued, my words trembling but filled with conviction. "I am gay. I've known it for a long time, and it's a part of who I am. I can't deny it anymore, and I can't pretend to be someone I'm not." Silence filled the room, heavy with the weight of their unspoken thoughts. I watched as emotions flickered across their faces, their expressions shifting from disbelief to anger. It felt as if the ground beneath me was crumbling, threatening to swallow me whole. My mother's voice trembled as she spoke, tears glistening in her eyes. "Rahul, are you joking? What are you even saying? You're not I interrupted, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. "I am, Mom. I am gay. I don't like women. I like men. I can't change that, and I don't want to live a lie." I then explained everything, my struggles to hide my nature, my secret wants and desires, my feelings for Arjun. Everything. The room was filled with silence, save for my mother's sobs as she sat facing away from me, crying, and refusing to look at me. But my father remained silent, his eyes smoldering with anger. I wanted to at least try and convince him, but he stood up from the table in anger. "I did not raise you to be this way," he shouted angrily. "Get out of my house." It felt as if all the sound had left the room for a brief second, as all of us comprehended what my father had said immediately. I saw my father's face fall with regret, but then his gaze filled with anger once more, and he doubled down on what he said. "Get out. I will not let you live in this house anymore." At this point, my mother intervened, incoherently begging my father to let me stay, but he was resolute. "I will not have him stay in this house for even a second longer," he declared. My parents had always been strict with me, but they were not unloving. I've had nothing but fond memories of them until now. But there was nothing to be done now. I packed my bags under my father's watchful eye and left the house. But I couldn't stop myself from trying one last time. "One day, I hope you will find it within yourself to accept me for who I am, because I can no longer live the way I used to," I said, trying to get the words out of my mouth, past the lump in my throat. My father simply closed the door in my face, and I could still hear my mother's cries as I left my home for the last time. "Hey." Arjun was surprised to see me, showing up at his door unannounced, with all my luggage over my shoulder. "Rahul, hi, but why are you..." I've been kicked out of my house, I interrupted. I told my parents that I was gay and they kicked me out. Overall, he was very understanding of the whole affair. He let me into his spare room and gave me an impromptu tour of the house. Then he cooked some dinner when my stomach protested that I had not finished eating my parents' dinner. As I was eating, he sighed, his face drawn in sadness. I've been where you are, he began, his gaze fixed on a distant point. When I told my family about my own identity, they kicked me out too. They'd already given me the keys to his house, so I just started living here. I think they know I'm here because they still pay some of the bills, but they refuse to talk to me anymore. It was the first time I'd heard him be so emotional. And I couldn't. Him reaching for his hand and squeezing it, trying to offer some embrace of comfort. Maybe it worked because he faced me and smiled sadly, and we both shared a moment of silence, of understanding. We were both the same, outcast by our families and factors we cannot control. In that shared moment of vulnerability, I couldn't help but blurt out, I think I have feelings for you. I said in a moment of impulse. I regretted it the very next second and couldn't help blushing in embarrassment as Arjun looked at me in shock. He then started laughing and I couldn't help but start laughing as well at my own blunder. You just went for it, huh? He said, while still giggling. I wanted to at least wait for a while before asking you out, but if you insist, do you want to go out with me? Yes. I want to go out with you, I exclaimed in happiness, and we smiled at each other as we affirmed our feelings for each other. I felt hopeful for the future, for the first time since I'd been kicked out of my home. If Arjun was by my side, maybe things would just be fine in the future. After that, we fell into a routine. We would greet each other after coming back home from our respective workplaces with a kiss, as well as on the way out, as well as when we were getting ready for the day. We just kissed each other a lot, to be honest. My work life didn't change a lot. My bosses didn't really care if I was in a romantic relationship with a man, as long as it didn't interfere with work. Some of the friends I had made in my work distanced themselves from me, but I wasn't too affected by it. At the end of the day, they didn't like me for who I was, and I can't change that. The few friends that did stay in contact were surprised, but they didn't make a big deal about it. It was a bit awkward at first, but everything turned out fine. My relationship with my parents was extremely bad, though. After that, neither one of my parents tried to contact me, and I didn't try to contact them either. Maybe I should have tried, but I felt as if I had tried with all I had. It was up to them to make the next move. In the meantime, both Arjun and I followed the news about Anika Sharma, a prominent LGBTQ+ right activist in Mumbai who was protesting against the sodomy law. Arjun was a huge fan of hers, and I have to say that his enthusiasm was infectious. And we both followed her efforts and tried to support them in our own small ways. Not everything was fine though. We then found out that the owners of the place where the LGBTQ+ support group found out about the group meetings and what they actually entailed, and banned the group from using it anymore. We could always look for a new place to meet, but I didn't want to just leave it at that. I had been thinking about it, and there had to be a lot of people who were driven away from their homes because of who they were. And I wanted to help them by building a place for them to stay, at least temporary. A place where they could be accepted for who they are, and which could help them get their bearings and survive on their own in this cruel world. I pitched the idea to Arjun and he was immediately gung-ho for it. He somehow got in touch with Anika Sharma and arranged for the all-pro LGBTQ+ supporters in Mumbai to help finance the project. And I designed and helped build a community center that would help people like me get some support in a country that still criminalized them. While I was in the middle of the project, however, a lot of things suddenly changed. I don't know who did it, but somehow my and Arjun's relationship was leaked out to our respective friends and families. We both soon started getting calls from distant aunts and uncles about our deviancy. Arjun's family broke their long-held silence and threatened him in a call that they would throw him out of our home and estrange him from the family forever. In the meantime, my father started calling me intermittently, telling me to change my decadent ways, but I simply talked back to him for the first time in my life, telling him that this is who I was and nothing he said could change that. I could tell Arjun was worried and upset about the whole thing. This was our home after all, and we could lose it if his family went through with their threat. I couldn't really tell him that it wouldn't happen. All I could do was tell him that I was with him every step of the way. No matter what happened, we would stay together. Nothing would separate us. Nothing. He looked at me, surprise in his eyes. "Since when did you get so brave?" he asked, slightly bewildered. I couldn't help my smile as I replied, "Can't help it. It's all because of my boyfriend's influence." He smiled, and we embraced one another. A silent vow exchanged between us to stay together for as long as we could, no matter what anyone said. The construction of the community center was going well. The situation with our families was not. Well, mostly. My mother had gotten in touch with me and called me sometimes. She avoided talking about my sexuality, but she was still worried about how I was living, and if I was eating well. She wasn't really accepting me, but I took what I could get. Arjun's elder brother was the same, checking up on Arjun to see if he was alright, and trying to offer what support he could. Although I could tell that their interactions were awkward on both sides. They did seem to still care for each other. His parents and my father were still the same though. In the meantime, Arjun and I still persisted with our activism efforts. We remained in contact with Anika, and more voices joined our protests. With every protest, every time, we advocated for our rights. A few more people joined us, and soon the pro-LGBTQ+ supporters in Mumbai were bigger than ever. And in 2018, our efforts paid off. The Supreme Court struck down the sodomy law. It was no longer a criminal act to be queer in India. We could be with each other without fear. It was not the end. Just because the court said so, it doesn't mean that we would be treated with equal rights on the streets. People will still look at us with disgust. Families will try to keep their kids away from our corrupting influence. People will still make jokes about us. Arjun's family has stopped with their threats to get him evicted. I think his elder brother has something to do with it, although I don't know all the details. Arjun's much happier these days, and we regularly meet up with his brother. When we first met, Arjun's brother tried to scare me throughout giving me a shovel talk and threatening me of what he'd do to me if I ever hurt Arjun. But he looked too much like Arjun for me to be intimidated by him. He lightened up eventually, and we were pretty chill these days. My father still doesn't speak with me, but in my birthdays and festivals, I get gifts delivered to my home, addressed to me but without a return address. I've sent my own gifts to him, but I don't know what he thinks of them. My mother visits me sometimes. She's still awkward around Arjun, as if she doesn't know how to act with him. Arjun has been nothing but polite with her though, and I'm sure she'll warm up to him eventually. I've become relatively famous in the LGBTQ+ community in Mumbai because of the community center I helped build. Sometimes I'm thanked by the people who've been given shelter by the center. People who could have been me if I had never met Arjun. I couldn't help but feel proud of what I've done. There's still a lot of work that we have to do. A single court ruling won't change everything. But somehow, I have faith in the belief that one day India will become a beacon of hope for the queer, where we can love who we love and be how we want to be, freely and without fear of judgment. I look forward to that day with Arjun beside me the whole time. The end. Did any part of this story resonate with you? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.